Who hits harder? 130-kilogram prop, who lives in the trenches, or an 105-kilogram center known for his attacking brilliance? According to Eben Etzebeth, one of rugby's most feared enforcers, the answer isn't what you'd expect. After facing every major rugby nation's biggest forwards over 130 test matches, after scrummaging against props who treat pain as a profession, after training daily with South Africa's most physical players, Etzebeth was asked a simple question: who's the hardest hitter you've ever faced? His answer shocked the rugby world. Nonu, the all-black center, hit harder than any forward Etzebeth had ever encountered. A back, generating more force than props whose entire careers are built on brutal collisions. How is that even possible? Picture this. You're Eben Etzebeth, standing 2 meters tall, weighing over 120 kilograms, with a reputation as one of the most physically intimidating players to ever wear the Springbok jersey. You've gone toe-to-toe with all-black legends, confronted massive Australian packs, and stared down the best the Northern Hemisphere could throw at you. Yet the player who made you question your own toughness wore the number 12 jersey. When Etzebeth made that admission, he didn't just praise a former opponent, he sparked one of rugby's most heated debates. To understand why this statement matters, you need to understand who's making it. Etzebeth didn't earn his fearsome reputation by accident. From his early days in South African rugby, he became known as a player who never backed down from physical confrontation. His international debut came in 2012, and within months, he'd established himself as the enforcer in the Springbok. Over the years, he's accumulated more than 130 test caps, faced every major rugby nation multiple times, and been part of a World Cup winning squad. The man has felt the impact of hundreds of collisions against the world's elite players. Throughout his career, Etzebeth has matched up against some genuinely massive human beings. He's scrummaged against props who treat pain as a hobby. He's been hit by flankers who make their living off brutal tackles. He's contested lineouts against locks who could double as professional fighters. In training alone, he's gone up against teammates who are considered among the most physical players in world rugby. His tolerance for contact isn't just high, it's off the chart. So when someone like Etzebeth singles out one player as the hardest hitter he's encountered, that's not casual conversation. That's a statement worth examining. And here's what makes it even more remarkable. The player he named isn't known primarily for defense. Nonu carved out a legendary career as one of rugby's most complete centers. The Wellington-born midfielder earned over 100 caps for New Zealand and was instrumental in 2 World Cup victories. What made Nonu special wasn't just one attribute. It was the complete package. He could break tackles with power, create space with vision, distribute the ball with precision, and yes, hit like a freight train on defense. But that defensive ability often got overshadowed by his attacking prowess. Coaches loved him because he could change a game in multiple ways. Opponents feared him because you never knew which version of Nonu would show up to hurt you. Standing at 180 centimeters and playing at around 105 kilograms during his prime, Nonu wasn't small by back standards, but he wasn't unusually large either. Plenty of centers carry similar dimensions. What separated him was technique combined with timing combined with sheer bad intentions. When Nonu decided to put a hit on someone, he committed everything to that moment. His tackles weren't just about stopping forward momentum, they were about making a statement. They were about letting the opposition know that running into his channel came with consequences. And apparently, even one of the world's toughest forwards felt those consequences. The question everyone's asking now: what made Nonu's tackling so devastating? Understanding why a center can hit harder than a forward requires looking beyond simple mass. Yes, props are heavier. Yes, they're conditioned for constant physical battle. But tackling power comes from multiple factors working together. Speed at point of contact matters enormously. A lighter player moving faster can generate more force than a heavier player moving slower. Technique amplifies everything. Knowing exactly where and when to make contact, how to use your shoulder, how to drive through the tackle rather than just making contact, These details separate good tacklers from legendary ones. Nonu mastered all of it. He had exceptional footwork that let him position himself perfectly before impact. He could read attacking lines better than most defenders, which meant he wasn't just reacting, he was anticipating. That split-second advantage allowed him to build momentum, but his core strength was phenomenal, giving him a solid base to tackle from. And perhaps most importantly, he had no hesitation. Some players pull back slightly at the last moment, some self-preservation instinct kicking in. Nonu didn't have that governor. There's another factor that might explain Etzebeth's reaction: expectation. When you're facing a massive prop, you brace for impact. Your body and mind are prepared for a huge collision. But when a back comes flying in with that same force, there's a moment of cognitive dissonance. Your brain isn't quite ready for that level of impact from that player type. Still, that doesn't fully explain why Etzebeth specifically called out Nonu above all others. Consider the competition Nonu was up against in Etzebeth's memory. The South African lock has faced some absolute monsters over his career. He's played against Australian props who pride themselves on physicality. He's confronted French forwards who treat rugby like legalized warfare. He's battled English packs built on power and aggression. Within his own team, he's trained alongside some of the Springbok's most physical players. Every single training session involves contact with world-class athletes who know how to hurt people legally within the laws of the game. Yet Nonu stands out. That's not a slight against any of those forwards. It's a testament to how exceptional Nonu was at that particular skill. It also raises interesting questions about position-specific tackling style. Forwards make dozens of tackles per game, usually at close quarters, often in controlled circumstances. They're managing their energy.
The tackles they make need to be definitive, because if they miss or make weak contact, the attacking player is through the defensive line. This difference in tackling context might explain why Nonu's hits felt so memorable. Every single one was a significant event, a moment of real danger that required total commitment. But there's another layer to this story that makes it even more interesting. Rugby at the highest level is as much mental as physical. Players develop reputations, and those reputations create psychological effects before contact even happens. If you know you're about to collide with someone who has a history of destructive tackling, that knowledge affects you. It might be subconscious, but it's there. Nonu had that aura. Players knew what was coming when they ran his channel, and that knowledge created hesitation, tension, changes in running lines. All of that gave Nonu additional advantages beyond his physical tools. For someone like Etzebeth to remember Nonu so specifically suggests those collisions left a lasting impression. We're talking about a player who's been in thousands of brutal contacts, yet these particular moments stayed with him. That speaks to both the physical impact and the psychological effect. It's one thing to hit hard, it's another thing entirely to hit so hard that years later one of the game's toughest players still brings it up unprompted. There's also something about cross-positional comparisons that fascinates rugby people. We expect forwards to dominate in physical exchanges. We expect props to be immovable. We expect locks to be uncompromising. When a back exceeds those expectations in a traditionally forward-dominated aspect of the game, it challenges our understanding of how rugby works. Which brings us to the controversial part of Etzebeth's admission. Not everyone agrees with Etzebeth's assessment, and that's what makes this fascinating. Rugby forums have been arguing about it since his comments went public. Some people point out that forwards hit differently than backs, so comparing them directly doesn't make sense. Others suggest that memorable doesn't necessarily mean hardest, just most surprising. There are those who question whether Etzebeth was being diplomatic, praising a retired legend rather than calling out current players. And then there are the believers who watched Nonu throughout his career and know exactly what Etzebeth is talking about. The truth is probably somewhere in the nuanced middle. Nonu almost certainly delivered some of the most impactful tackles Etzebeth experienced, particularly when accounting for surprise factor and the specific circumstances of those collisions. Whether he hit objectively harder than every single prop Etzebeth ever faced is probably impossible to measure. But that's not really the point. The point is that a player known primarily for his attacking game made such an impression with his defensive hitting that one of rugby's toughest forwards still talks about it. This debate also touches on a larger question about how we evaluate rugby players. Do we categorize them too strictly by position? Do we underestimate what backs can do in traditional forward areas? Should we pay more attention to technique and timing rather than just size and strength? These aren't easy questions, but they're worth asking. What makes this whole discussion valuable is what it reveals about both players. Etzebeth's willingness to give credit to an opponent shows a level of respect that transcends national rivalry. He could have named a teammate or avoided the question entirely, but instead he gave an honest answer that elevated a former opponent. That's the mark of someone secure in their own abilities. Meanwhile, Nonu's legacy gets an additional leg. He was already considered one of the great centers of the modern era, but this admission from Etzebeth cements his reputation as someone who excelled at every aspect of the game. The comparison between a back's tackling and a forward's physicality will continue to generate discussion, because it challenges assumptions. It forces us to think about rugby beyond simple stereotypes. It reminds us that the most dangerous players are often the ones who develop skills outside their position's traditional boundaries. Props are supposed to hit hard. When a center hits that hard, it's unexpected, and unexpected is always more dangerous. So was Nonu really the hardest hitter Eben Etzebeth ever faced? According to the man himself, yes. And given Etzebeth's experience level, given the caliber of players he's competed against, given his reputation for toughness, that answer carries significant weight. Whether you agree or disagree, the fact that we're having this conversation proves both players achieved something special. They operated at a level where their collisions became legendary, where their reputations extended beyond their own teams and nations, where years later people still debate the details of their physical exchanges. That's the kind of impact that defines greatness. Nonu hit with devastating force. Etzebeth acknowledges it openly, and rugby enthusiasts everywhere get to enjoy the debate that follows. In the end, maybe that's the real legacy of both players, creating moments so memorable that they spark discussions long after the final whistle blows. The argument continues, the respect remains, and the legend grows with each retelling.